I want to take my cue from my sister, the Prime Minister of Barbados. She made a very profound point that we know of each other, but we don't know each other. And I realized that when I took over the government of my country in 2016, I made it a point of duty to engage the African continent. And so far, I visited my brother, President Geingob, and we've made very good links, and we have had exchanges. I've made it a point of duty to visit South Africa. I've been to Morocco, and now I'm here in Kenya, having had the great privilege of hosting President Kenyatta in Jamaica, where he would have also had the opportunity to see Jamaica firsthand. You see, the important thing about developing the business relationship is also to have a people-to-people understanding. And for far too long, we have spoken in glowing terms about our relationship, but we haven't really utilized the value of that relationship to layer on top of that the business opportunities. So for me, a practical way of creating business is to utilize the people-to-people relationship. Now, for the Caribbean region and Jamaica in particular, we already have those strong fraternal ties expressed in music and culture. Reggae music is big in Kenya. I'm surprised to see that it is such a powerful cultural force. And sports, we have great opportunities in sports, and we share so much in sports. Now let's start to exchange business cards. And as I reach into my pocket, I am holding out the business card of Tony Emuelu. So I know some business is going to be happening between Jamaica. But that's the start of it. And there are so many great opportunities. Never let size be an obstacle for business. Jamaica is a small country, 2.7 million people, but you would never know. The point is that on the world stage we have an amplified voice and we speak loudly, but we're also very agile in business. Congratulations, President Kenyatta. You passed us in the race for being efficient and competitive. You are now at 50 and we are at 71. But don't worry, we're gonna pass you. We're gonna pass you. And by the way, we're number 6 in the world in starting a new business. We have had, for the last 3 years, the #1 performing stock market in the world. It's a small stock market. You may miss it if you're searching for the international markets. But it shows you the level and speed and intensity of business in Jamaica. So there's a great opportunity for investors here in Kenya and in the wider African continent to look to Jamaica for investment opportunities. And we welcome you. Jamaica and the rest of the Caribbean, Barbados, we have very stable democracies with very stable economic policies, particular fiscal policies. So this is a good environment for investors to consider to place resources. But more than that, we are now at a phase in our development where we are emphasizing infrastructure and energy, 2 critical planks of any country's development. In Jamaica, for example, we have been investing heavily in infrastructure. And it's always a puzzle to me because China has taken a specific interest. The European countries have taken a specific interest, but we have not yet had an African country taking a specific interest in very profitable infrastructure investments in Jamaica. And I'm using this opportunity to invite African investors to come and participate in the development of the country. Very profound point was made by Tony about the need to have efficient energy. Jamaica faces the same problem where companies are seeking to migrate from the grid. That is an unnecessary cost, makes businesses less efficient than they could be otherwise with an efficient grid. But Jamaica has a balancing act. We have to fulfill our obligations to the climate. So as we seek to become energy efficient, we are also seeking to reduce our carbon footprint. So we have diversified in the last 5 or so years our energy mix, moving from heavy fuel oils into LNG, still not the cleanest, but still less carbon emitting. But we are now very close to having 30% of our electricity generation coming from renewables. Right now we are at about 17 to 18%, but we're positioning our grid such that we can incorporate more renewables without increasing the cost. The technology is improving. What we need to move apace with the technology is the willingness for firms to make those investments in the new technology. So I endorse what you have said, Tony, and I encourage it here for African leaders as well. Ensure that you have efficient electricity power generation, but also make sure that it is environmentally friendly. The other point I'd want to emphasize, because everything has been said already, and I know we have a time constraint. I mean, it's been said in one way, government should get out of the way. Regulators should say what you want and then step aside. It is absolutely important that governments recognize that the private sector is not the enemy. It is absolutely important that governments realize that profit is not a bad word. Absolutely important. And I mentioned the point that Africa has gone through phases, so too has the Caribbean. And the phase that we're now in is to try to determine what is the right role for government. Because lurking in the background of this newly discovered spirit of enthusiasm about industry and commerce and growth is still a large percentage of our population lives in absolute poverty. So in the conversation about the economy and the incorporation and the new partnership with the private sector, must be within that partnership an understanding that we have to do more in dealing with poverty in our countries. And the work that I've seen here with the exemplary things that you're doing, Tony, is a perfect example of how businesses with good corporate social responsibility, supported by governments, can have efficient private sector, efficient businesses making profits, but at the same time address the issues of equity and inequality that has traditionally plagued African, Caribbean, and Pacific countries. I believe we are at a juncture in our development where, if played correctly, if governments understand their role in facilitating businesses, if governments understand their role of curbing corruption and increasing their legitimacy with their population, and private sector people understand that profit is not just for them, but profit is for mankind, then we, as African people, as Caribbean people, as people from the Pacific, can lead in this fourth industrial revolution and truly achieve prosperity for our people.